Here we go again. Okay, um, first thing I have to tell you again is you guys are really doing a nice job. Your essays are pretty thorough. You're going pretty well. I commented on somebody's essay this week that they were doing too much hinting at. It wasn't on an essay, it was on somebody's comment. Rather than giving detail, they were just kind of hinting at what they were saying. In general, people are doing a very nice job with their essays and a very nice job with their comments. Keep it up. What I'm really enjoying is the fact that you're getting it. You're getting the idea of what it's all about. You're getting the idea of the fact that we want you to put forth your own opinion. We want you to say to somebody, yeah, that's different from what I thought. Your feelings are different. Your ideas are different. And I appreciate what you're saying. Or, yeah, I thought a lot of the same thing, and here's why. That's cool. That's what we want you to do. So keep it up, okay? Oh, okay. I'm at my place in Canandaigua here, and you can see, there's some activity going on around me, which is all right. It's just a beautiful day, people walking behind me, and you can see my boat in the water behind me there. Canal goes right out into Canandaigua Lake, so it's pretty cool. Anyway, this week we want to talk about the role of the narrator in fiction. Okay, the way a narrator presents a story to us can make a huge difference in how we interpret that story. Now, a critical part of all of this is the fact that you have to accept right away that the author and the narrator are not the same person. The narrator, the person who tells you the story, is a character created by the author, even if that narrator is not named. And sometimes the narrator is not named. The author is the person who writes the story. The narrator is the person who tells you the story, and they are not the same. It's very important that you make that separation. Why is it so important that you make that separation? Let me explain something to you. People in general have the idea that Edgar Allan Poe was a nut, a lunatic, a druggie, because he created narrators in his works who were kind of crazy, who may have been drug users, who may have been put down as drunk when they were telling you the story. But that was not Poe. Those were narrators that he created, and he was very good at creating those kind of narrators. And why did he create those kind of narrators? Because they grab onto you. They suck you into the story. They make you part of it, so it makes you think that Poe is in fact the person telling you the story when he's not. It's a created character, named or unnamed, that he put in the story. It's the same for any story that you read. So you shouldn't assume that the person who is speaking to you in the story is the author. Rather, that's a created character, named or unnamed, who is the narrator. Okay? Okay, now, we have different kinds of narrators. We all know that sometimes a narrator comes to us in a story through the point of view of I. A narrator might be an actual character who is named in the story, a character who carries on conversation and such, okay, and speaks to us from the point of view of I. So it's like this active character in the story is also the person telling us the story. Well, when a character is, he's a character in the story, but he's also telling us the story, that's called a first-person narrator. First person. He talks to us from the point of view of I, this character, am telling you this story. Okay, that's a first-person narrator, and that's pretty common in literature to have a first-person narrator. Why does an author have a first-person narrator when in fact it's not the author, but it's a created character? He still uses a first-person narrator because the first-person narrator really draws us into a story. He really makes us a part of the story because he's saying, I I all the way through. And so that I that's speaking to us becomes, we internalize that. That becomes I, the reader. So we become a part of the story. So that's a great way to draw the reader into the story. Okay, so that's a first-person narrator, one who says I. Is that the only kind of first-person narrator? No, it's not. If you remember A Rose for Emily, we had the story told to us from the point of view of the townspeople. It was like the townspeople were speaking to us with one voice, telling us about Miss Emily. Okay, so that was a first-person narrator, but it wasn't a first-person narrator who was actually a character. It was somebody speaking to us from the point of view of I, or we in that case. But they were something of an omniscient narrator, an all-knowing narrator, okay? This narrator was standing off telling us what was being seen, and again, speaking to us as kind of a single voice from the townspeople, okay? Was this narrator, though, totally omniscient? The word omniscient means all-knowing. It comes from the Latin word scio, to know, and omnis, all. So all-knowing. An omniscient narrator is all-knowing. Well, in fact, as we find out in A Rose for Emily, that character doesn't know as much as, that narrator doesn't know as much as the narrator thinks that he knows. So that is actually a limited omniscient narrator. This character is telling us the story, the voice of the people, okay, telling us the story, and using the term I or we, speaking as if the voice of the people, but doesn't know all the facts. So it's limited all-knowing, because really all-knowing means all-knowing, okay? So that's a limited first-person narrator, is that kind of a narrator that we saw in A Rose for Emily, where a normal omniscient narrator would have known all the facts, would have known that Emily was keeping a dead body, Homer barren, and everything that goes on there. Okay, so an omniscient narrator knows everything, speaks to us from the point of view of I or we. Just a normal first-person narrator speaks to us as if we, or this character who's in the story, is actually living the story and telling us about it. And then we have a third-person narrator. An awful lot of fiction is written in the third person. For instance, the story of an hour, okay? That story was told by somebody who was not a part of it at all. It was told by somebody who was kind of like in the background, just plain observing it and not putting their own thoughts in at all, just putting in the thoughts and feelings of the people in the story. So there is no I or we in that story. It's a totally third-person story, okay? And A Sorrowful Woman, totally third-person story. We don't get on the inside of people in that story. We can read and make assumptions, but we don't have any I or we in there, okay? So a first-person narrator talks from the point of view of I, me, we. An omniscient first-person narrator knows everything, isn't just a character in the story, but knows everything. A limited omniscient narrator is, again, somebody like the voice of the people, we, but doesn't know everything. The third-person narrator is really detached, is not involved in the story. It's almost like, a broadcaster at a sporting event, where they're not talking about themselves at all. They're talking only about those people down on the field, and they aren't even giving opinions. They're just doing the broadcasting. That's a third-person narrator, okay? So in the works this week, think about the narrators. Usually, again, the third-person narrator is objective and outside of it all. Your question for you this week is this, and you have to think a little bit about it this week. One of the stories you're reading is carnal knowledge. There's two meanings to that, okay? Carnal is, of course, meaning meat, but there's two meanings for that. So think about that, get your thoughts together, and get your essay to me. Thanks.